Hello, guys. Today we're going to be talking about a new topic for the first part of your midterms here in what we will consider your webinars for art appreciation. So, this is me, your instructor, Sir Ian. And for this session, we're going to be talking about serial forms and material difference. All right. So, hello, everybody. um, Today we're going to be talking about pop art and the proliferation of consumer goods in the United States after the Second World War prompted pop artists to borrow the materials, techniques, and imagery of mass production for their art. Predominantly American group of artists which are known as minimalists, they used manufactured materials, industrial fabrication, and repeated forms in their work, but opted to leave the imagery of pop art behind. Together, these strategies challenged notions of traditional notions of the uniqueness of works of art and the role of artistic expression and skill. In this lesson, you are going to consider your own definitions of painting and sculpture and explore two works of art for my discussion and then another one for your activity made with repeated forms that may challenge these definitions that we talk about in your categories of art, namely your 2D and your 3D, your painting and your sculpture. Okay? Um, you're going to discuss artist choices in relation to materials, methods of making, display, and you will consider artist choices related to materials, line, color, and of course scale, which are some of the different elements of art which we've been talking about for the past few weeks. You will also consider artist motivation for using repeated forms. So we're going to look into patterns by different artists for our discussion in this webinar, and you will compare and contrast industrially fabricated works of art with those made by hand. Okay, so the works of art that I will be discussing with you this afternoon employ repeated forms and use materials that are, associated more with industry actually rather than art. So these tendencies were embraced by pop artists in the early 1960s, most notably the artist Andy Warhol. All right. So what you can see in here is a well-known artist which is actually discussed or which is actually the very big bulk of your readings and viewings or the learning materials that are in your Google Classroom. She is Kusama Yayoi, a Japanese artist. Okay, so this is an artwork which is done by Kusama Yayoi. Okay, so if you look at it, it is entitled The Accumulation of Stamps 63. And I want you to look at it and then describe what you see first. Okay, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can pause it a little bit. I want you to look at the painting first, and I want you to pay particular attention to composition, color, and line. So we've been, trying to do this. Your examination is sort of related to this. So that's all I want you to do right now. Just try to look at the composition, how it is made, the different how the elements work together. For example, I want you to go over the color and I want you to go over the line. All right. Now, after you do that, I want you to look closely at this work and I want you to try to infer, try to get a sense of how it was made. Ano? So I want you to see, I want you to think about it. I want you to look at it and I want you to infer, create ideas about what do you think it is, what do you think is in the how do you think it was made, what materials did she make, for example, how did she put together this thing. So those are the questions that I want you to answer as you look at this artwork. If it's not too clear in your screens right now, kindly open another tab or go online, go to Google, and then look for accumulation of stamps, comma 63 by Kozama Yayoi. All right. Actually, Kozama made this collage by placing, guess what? Individual adhesive labels on brown paper that she had covered with an even wash of black ink. So you can see that behind that there are black inks, and then these are actually individual adhesive labels. Okay, these are like small stickers where you can write names, or you can put labels that you can use for jars or anything. So I want you to think of adjectives, for example, to describe the lines that are formed by the stickers. Okay, for example, for me, the first thing that I would say will be, it is uneven, right? So the way that the adhesives are put together, they don't really follow something straight. So if it's like a brick, it's not if these are actually bricks, like they are not stacked properly together. So probably one, it is, there's an imbalance in there. It's sort of uneven. It can be shaky. It can even fall, for example. So those are some of the adjectives you can think of. Okay, like uneven, imbalance, and I want you to think of more. Okay, when you look at it, what are the other adjectives that you can think of when you look at this artwork by Kusama? Okay. If you look at the lines that are formed by the stickers, they also want you to point out which lines lead your eyes around the collage. Okay, so when you were looking at, as you look at the collage right now, or when you were looking at it earlier, do you remember where did your eyes fall into the first time you saw it? Where what certain areas did did you first look into? What were the first parts that you actually noticed? Okay, so I want you to infer, or I want you to conclude where Kusama might have begun applying the stickers. Saang banda siya nagsimula? Where did Kusama started laying down or sticking down the labels, or the what is this, the adhesive labels. Okay, so those are some of the things that you can look into, actually. All right, so what are the certain parts in there, and how do you think does this affect the edges of the composition? So try to look at the different edges in the painting. Okay, so you can see it in there. In the early 1960s, Kusama used labels and stickers. The usually or stickers that are made for file folders, stickers that are made for airmail, stickers that are used for pricing, to make grid-like collages. And while the stickers provided a ready-made, standardized form, she applied them in weaving. She misaligned the grids, even cropping some at the edges, which you can see in here on the far edge of the painting. And those added to the quality, or to the signature, or to the style of the composition in her work. When she was a girl, Yayoi Kusama had hallucinations of flowers, dots, and nets. She said this in interview. There was a quotation. I remember she said, the same pattern. This was from her. These are her words. The same pattern, covering the ceiling, the windows, and the walls, and finally all over the room, my body, and the universe. So she has said that the use of repeated forms, in this case, the store-bought labels and stickers, they grow out of her struggle with these hallucinations caused by actually mental illness and depression. She does not consider her art to be an end in itself. Instead, it serves a personal function. I am pursuing my art in order to correct the disability which began during my childhood, sabi niya, 'di ba? That's an interesting quote, actually. I am pursuing my art in order to correct the disability which began during my childhood. The repetition that you can see in here required to make collages like this one are reflected in Kusama's titles, which often include the words accumulation and infinity. So as you can see, the title of this painting is Accumulation of Stamps 63. Okay? This one is in MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, actually. Okay, so Kusama said that her use, that's her, very fierce lady with that burning red hair, very creative look. She has said that her use of repeated forms grows out of her lifelong struggle, actually, with mental illness. So she does not consider her art to be an end in itself, but rather, she has said it serves a personal function. In one interview, she has said, I am pursuing my art in order to correct the disability which began during my childhood. And all of these ones, the things that she was talking about actually were all the patterns that she was using for the different artworks that she would pursue or that she would create later on for the rest of her career. All right, so I want to show you another artwork. This one is by Donald Judd. Again, it's entitled Untitled, but it's a stack, and it is image 4. I want you to look at it, and I want you to name characteristics which seems to share with painting. What are elements or what are characteristics? What are things about Judd's stack which you think share with painting and characteristics that are shared with sculpture? So I want you to observe it visually, and I want you to consider formal traits. The things I've been talking about in the first grading. I want you to look at the line, the shape, the color, materials, and the dimensionality of it. Okay, so you can look at all of those. The line, shape, color, materials, dimensionality. In 1965, Judd wrote, half or more of the best works in the last few years have been neither painting nor sculpture, sabi niya, but rather Judd calls them specific objects. And what are these? Judd's three-dimensional objects, including this one, Untitled Stack, challenge the strict categorization of art into mediums, diba? Which is something that we talked about in the first grading, like we've been trying to label them or we've been trying to categorize them. That's why we call them the categories of art. But Judd was questioning this. Why do we need to categorize something, like calling it a painting or calling it a sculpture? And these things dominated the discussion of abstract art in the 1950s hanggang nung early 1960s. This has been a very big part of their conversation before in art. So, Untitled or stack that you can see here includes, 12 identical units. You can count them now. Okay? And each square unit is actually 40 inches wide, 31 inches deep, and 9 inches tall. And according to the artist's specifications, the work must be installed. So the vertical space between each unit, you can see that in the photo right now. The vertical space between each unit is also 9 inches far from each other. So to give you a sense of scale, yung parang balance niya or how it's spread out, I want you to you know, maybe you can actually you can look at it visually right now. You can say that there's actually a balance, or there's an equality in the way that they are put together as an artwork, or they were installed. So those are some details of this work by Donald Judd. So I want you to count right now, for example, I want you to count how many units are visible in this image. Okay, so I want you to consider why all 12 what how the 12 units look together. Okay? So depending on the height of the ceiling of the gallery where you're going to put it, just try to imagine. Let's say for example they bring stock here in the Philippine National Museum, no? And we're going to display it. And depending on the gallery ceiling, the number of units may be reduced to maintain proper spacing between them, right? So, well, the photo that you can see right now, all 12 of it was actually installed. But for example, I'm in my room right now. For example, if for example on the wall we can only put around 3 or 4, then that's it. 'Di ba? So what does that tell you? Na pwede mong bawasan, that you have the ability to actually delimit, or to lower down, or to put lesser numbers in it. It means that there is a flexibility of this work that reflects that the importance to Judd of the whole work of art over the individual parts. Pwede mo pala siyang gawing dynamic or flexible. You can put parts of it only, you don't need to put the whole thing, etc. So I actually want you right now to sort of reflect and consider the relationship of this work to viewers and to the surrounding space, how we're able to install this, you know. I want you to pay particular attention to the scale, gaano siya kalaki and how it is being displayed. So Judd made his objects bearing viewers' bodies in mind. He was thinking about how people look when they look at it, not just their sense of sight, because you know he believed that the body's movement through space greatly affected a viewer's perception of a work of art. Diba? So that's actually, I actually agree with this. I adhere to this. Like when you're in a museum and then you move around, your movement through the space affects the way you understand the art. If you're smaller, if you're taller, all of these things have actually something to tell or something to inform the way you look at an artwork. So although it is hung on a wall like a painting, no, stack Untitled stack is nearly 3 feet nearly 3 feet from the wall, and it rises imposingly from floor to the ceiling. Okay, and that's what makes this artwork really, really interesting. To give you more idea, actually, the Untitled stack is actually made of galvanized iron, okay, which is mottled gray color. The sides, you know, are covered with commercially available translucent green. They are um, they're actually green lacquer that is used to customize motorcycles like Harley Davidson motorcycles. So beginning in the mid 1960s, Judd's works are actually fabricated by a small manufacturing company called the Bernstein Brothers. And although Judd was actually criticized for using non-traditional art materials, you know, like this green lacquer thing, and for not making his objects by hand, sabi niya, if someone says his work is art, it is art. And I think that's also an interesting way to view art appreciation because you're enrolled in art appreciation. If the artist says, art tong ginawa ko, then who are we, or parang sa kanya, who are we or who are you to question it? So, that's my question for you, which I will ask you to answer later in Google in Google Classroom in the questions. Do you agree with Chad's statements that you know if an artist says that it's art, then his work is actually art? Okay, so what you can see right now is another artwork. This one is repetition 19, the third, by Eva Hess. This is image 5, and I want you to describe what you see. I want you to keep in mind the idea of shape, color, and arrangement of forms. You know how they are put together. So I want you to look at this artwork. You can Google this later. You can read about it online. And I want you to write a list of similarities and differences between this and the work of Judd, which is Untitled Stack. And when you're finished, I want you to share this list, or I want you to organize this list, and I want you to answer it later on in your task in Google Classroom. Okay? So that's the first part of the task. The bigger bulk of the task, which is your your home assignment right now, is I want you to make a 2 or 3 dimensional work of art using repeated forms or images. So for 2 dimensional works, for example, you may want to use just like the work of Kusama that I showed to you a while ago. You can use labels, you can use stamps, you can use photocopies, which is something that Warhol did. Don't worry, we'll talk about this later on. I have a separate discussion on Warhol. You can also use photographs or photocopy transfers. If you are curious about these things, you can Google or you can watch on YouTube. Photocopy transfers. Uh, if you decide, for example, to use 3 dimensional works, you may use conventional art supplies or small everyday objects which are available in your homes already, or recycled materials. So I encourage you to be creative not only in selecting your materials but in forming your compositions. So I want you to do this once, probably over until the weekend, and I want you to work on this. Be very creative, be very resourceful about how you're going to do it. You can see on the onset of my screen right now, this is Pumpkin by Kozama Yayoi, one of her key artworks, or one of the artworks that she's done, which is really famous. And while you're doing that, I want you to keep in mind the range of materials that you are using, the forms that you are using. And later on, after when you're going to submit, I will be asking you to share the reasons why you selected the particular material or image that you chose to repeat. Okay? So there are some questions that I will be asking you later on. All right. So with that, thank you. I'm going to see you in class next week, and good luck with your activity.